Welcome, this is a recorded session of the Post-Quantum Cryptography Conference of the PKI Consortium. This conference would not have been possible without our sponsors, PQ Shield, SSL.com, Entrust, Keyfactor, HID Global, and the organizational support of the Post-Quantum Cryptography Working Group of the PKI Consortium, and in particular, Entrust, Keyfactor, and Logius. Would you like to join the PKI Consortium? Go to pkic.org/join, or contact us if you would like to become a sponsor.
Moving on with our agenda today, our next speaker, Alessandro Amadori, is going to be discussing crypto asset discovery tooling, an overview of capabilities, which I think is of great interest, continuing on CBOM conversations and other things this morning. Alessandro gave a very interesting talk yesterday, so he's almost a veteran now here at PKI, on some migration projects that he'd been working on with ABN AMRO that I found very interesting. Just give me 1 second. Alessandro is a cryptographer at TNO in the Netherlands, focusing on migration to post-quantum cryptography. He has a PhD from Eindhoven University in cryptographic implementations. And as we were discussing earlier, he's been party to a number of practical implementations of post-quantum crypto in the market space. So without further ado, Alessandro.
Thank you, John. Always so kind. In this presentation, we wanted to show you a little bit of our experience on cryptographic asset discovery and inventory, and a few projects, and also describing the insights that we got from a project that we worked on with the Dutch government. And here we go. Oh, here. It's vibrating. Oh, yeah. So I wanted to give a small introduction on why cryptographic asset discovery and inventorization is important, but the presentation of Blair yesterday kind of covered it and showed the real need and urgency on this topic. But the whole gist comes down to knowledge is power. So you want to have an inventory of your cryptographic assets for a number of reasons, not only for to prepare to the PQC migration, because of course you want to know which algorithm you need to migrate to, but it's always nice to have an overview of what you have regardless of the PQC migration, so if you're implementing obsolete or weak algorithms, so that you're not really subject to cyber attacks, and of course you want to have you want to comply with the regulations that mandate you to use a particular kind of algorithms. So what is crypto asset discovery and inventory, and how do you do it? So the whole gist is, of course, generating knowledge of all the cryptographic assets that you have, in your environment. So it is about finding your cryptographic keys, where they are located, and all the cryptographic materials that you're using. So passwords, nonces, tokens, and so on. In which protocols they're used, and their context, how they are managed, for what purpose they're used, how all this cryptographic material is. And then if you want to look for them, there is a whole bunch of settings which you need to go and look for them. So of course you're using cryptography in your network communication, but in your file systems, hardware and firmware, credit cards and passes, and also software, source code implementations, apps and libraries. And there's, we have been looking around at what's already done in the market, and we see that there is a bunch of ways in which you can carry out asset discovery, cryptographic asset discovery. You can do it passively or actively, and there's products that offer you a whole bunch of services. There are products that focus only on one side of the discovery, so that tools that focus mostly on network or source code, but there's also software tools that try to cover the entire spectrum. And some of the software can be open source or proprietary, so we were curious to know more about it and build our own opinions. So this is why we set up the CADI project, which of course stands for Cryptographic Asset Discovery and Inventory. Started early in 2024. It's about to finish next month. Then whatever comes out of the research will be probably published in the report. So this project was part of the track of the QSA Rijk, which is the Quantum Safe Cryptography Government for the Netherlands. It was funded by the National Cybersecurity Center of the Netherlands, the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Kingdom Relations, the Ministry of Economic Affairs. And it was very interesting for them because the cryptographic asset discovery is it's one fundamental step in the PQC migration, the one that we describe in the handbook, and it is part of the diagnosis. It's really like if you want to get started, this is one of the first things you have to do before migrating. And as I mentioned before, building a cryptographic asset discovery and building a cryptographic inventory is a non-regret move, as we describe it in the handbook, which is something that you might want to do regardless of the PQC migration. So the main question that we had when we were trying to set up this project is, if we were to build tools that do asset discovery and then make an inventory, what would we do? What would such a tool look like? And what is already there in the market? Is such tool already available, or can we figure out how to make one? So there was this is how we carry out the research. So there was a little bit of literature review. We started with the NCCOE special publication 813B, and we also started taking a look at CBOMs more in depth. We provided feedback. We provided feedback before the standardization. I unfortunately missed the CBOM presentation before, so I hope I don't say anything too weird. And then once we build up a little bit of knowledge on what a cryptographic asset discovery inventory tool should do, we went to some entities and say, okay, what do you need to be able to have such an inventory or to be able to deploy such tools? What is it that you're looking for? Not to vendors, to buyers, to clients. And unsurprisingly, most of the answers were compliance. So we set up, a few workshops and asking them, hey, what do you want to have? And it's just like, I don't want my information to be leaked. I want to have a good inventory. I want to be compliant. So then on the other side, we went to actually sellers, providers of such toolings, and we were asking them, what is it that you offer and why is it good, or according to you? So other than a Google search, we set up interviews with them. At the same time, we were not really tackling vendors of dedicated toolings, but we were also looking at providers of generic IT or cybersecurity toolings that were able to, monitor or create, a good inventory of assets, and we were trying to figure out if some of these tools could be used to generate a cryptographic inventory. And in the end, what we decided to do is we gather all this information and we try to describe what would our ideal tool look like and what would be the minimum that we would require from a tool to do. We call it a minimal viable product, MVP. I will talk a little bit about it later. And then, as the last step of the research, we were trying to see which ones of the tools already in the market, comes the closest to what we have in mind in our tool. So when we were trying to design an ideal tool, we couldn't really do that because the nature of the use cases were too different. So we decided to divide it into IT and OT. Why am I missing? Okay. So yeah, we were trying to build, an ideal tool and a minimum viable product tool. So we couldn't make a whole comprehensive one. We had to distinguish between IT and OT because they have different requirements. And then we wanted to, once you make a tool and says, okay, I want my tool to do this, and that, then you need to figure out, okay, how practical it is. So what should be able to do? So we were measuring the performance and convenience, so trying to balance effort and accuracy. So of course, the more accurate information you want, the more resource you have to invest them. So effort, we define it as, you know, how much time you need to invest in that for deploying it in your environment. So the performance penalty on the system, because you are running tools that maybe continuously scanning, so they can cause a bottleneck in your system. The cost, you know, how much is going to cost to buy that product and to deploy it. But then, you know, on the other side, the accuracy is, you know, how much can I cover and how well this tool can describe what I need. You know, it's not just about, oh, I've been able to find a lot of cryptographic keys, but I can't tell you more about it. So we wanted to have a little bit more on that. And completeness, you know, we wanted to have low false rates, basically. This is going on its own. Yeah, and obviously, the more accurate the tool you want, the more overhead it causes, so you need to take that into account. So to be able to measure that, we kind of designed a cryptographic discovery, asset discovery maturity model, which is, you know, it's kind of a layered approach. So you can start by low effort at the very top, and you can go down to level 9, and that is the most accurate that you can get, but also the most expensive, but it's kind of building on top of each other. You cannot just go to level 9, but you need to implement all steps 1, 2, all the steps and to be able to get to number 9. And you can see there is some common traits that you can do for both IT and OT, but there are some other levels which cannot be implemented either IT or OT. And so this is more or less what we came up with. So the requirements of, if we were to make such a tool, the requirements would be the one in the left-hand side. So we want to, the capabilities of the tool should be that we can measure the scanning frequency, where can we run, which agents, if we can ingest CBOMs, and most of all, you know, what kind of accuracy you can get, and of course the scoping, and you know how well you can actually integrate it in your infrastructure, how much effort you need to put into that. And this is more or less what we want to get, but then in order to have a good overall assessment over every requirement, you have to combine it with the maturity matrix. So so we were trying to map OT and IT minimal viable product and ideals, and this is what we came up with. I think number 7 is actually dark brown. So this is, don't want to really spend too much time of it, but the point that we want to get is for both IT and OT, a minimal viable product, you should have implemented levels 1 and 2, which is you should already be, as a starting point, you know, even before implementing or adopting tools, you should already start using the information that you have in your system and either collect the information that you have in a CBOM or start requiring CBOMs from your vendor. And then we were also trying to map the scope of the toolings that were available with the ones that we were, you know, the ideal MVP. So this is the overview that we had. You know, the minimal viable product for IT should at least be able to do network scanning and a static file system. The ideal IT should be able to cover all of them. Not so sure about. We're not entirely sure about firmware. Maybe it's more relevant to OT. Oh, this goes on its own. And then we were trying to see which supplier of cryptographic asset discovery CADI tools, you know, were covering which scope they were covering. And at the same time, we were also, you know, started to look at security providers, and you know, they did not really provide soft tools for cryptographic asset discovery or an inventory, but they could potentially do that. So if you have a network scanner, you know, if you have a tool that just does network scanning, maybe it can be extended to be able to provide an overview of your cryptographic assets and maybe produce a CBOM. So this is also what we were trying to see if the, you know, the ideal and MVP tools that we were trying to come up with was actually realistic and was already available in the market. So long story short, almost there's a few suppliers that can provide a good overall product, but there are still gaps to be found, and especially in OT. So that comes down to basically what we have observed. There is a lot of focus on IT system that is very good, but the OT environment, you know, it being a little bit more challenging, it is a little bit, you know, left aside and forsaken. So our advice is to stimulate vendors to include OT in their CADI toolings. The second is we noticed there is no ground truth. There's some suppliers that say we can do this perfectly at 100%, and we're like, really? So test what you so try and set up experiment and test if what they promise is actually true. The third gap that we saw is that there was a lot of reinventing the wheel, especially for suppliers that cover the same scope. They were trying to reinvent the wheel, and they were using probably, you know, could be that they could be using the same techniques or similar techniques, but we did not see the possibility of reusing capabilities that cybersecurity toolings already provide and build on top of that. And the last that we've seen is that the demand is very compliance driven. So in the USA, the companies are regulated or mandated by the US to provide an inventory. In Europe, it's mostly a recommendation, and if, you know, when users mostly care about compliance, if there is nothing to be compliant to, it's kind of difficult to make them do this. NIS2 or other recommendation do advise to make a cryptographic asset, a cryptographic inventory, but this should be regulated, at least from a European level. So small wrap up with a few key points. Crypto asset discovery and inventorization is a no-regret move. So you should, you know, it's always a good idea to do it regardless anyway, and you can start doing it now. The first thing you can do is already start using the information that you have and make it in a standard format, and possibly using CBOMs and requesting CBOMs. Some tools, you know, tools are not perfect yet, but they are already pretty good, and you can already start using them, and shouldn't be a problem. And if you want to know more, please get in contact with us, and we can elaborate more on a few points. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. You're doing great. At this point, we do want to open it up to questions to the audience or online, but I'm going to ask one first. The work that you're doing on tracking tools and their progression, is this something you're going to continue and give updates on over time?
Good question. That's the hope. That's the hope. That's kind of a building block for the initiative of the quantum safe government in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. That's the hope. We hope so.
Very well. Question to the audience, please.
Hi, Alessandro. Thank you very much for your presentation, for your work. This is terribly interesting, and I will like to talk to you later about it. But one thing came to my mind, which I find like an inconsistency. So on one side, you say that it is ideal that this kind of tools have agents. Mm-hmm. And on the other side, in the end, you also say that one gap is that these tools are not leveraging the previous existence of other tools in the organizations. So in my opinion, in a large organization, deploying agents everywhere is a very complex project in itself. Mm-hmm. And I also agree that the information that we need is already there. We just need to unearth it. So where I think many of these vendors are failing is that they're not trying to leverage the agents that we already have deployed to learn information from them and integrate it. Because in fact, we large organizations, we do not want to deploy more Cloudflares that generate an issue like we have this year. So I suggest that you review having an agent as an ideal, because I think that having an agent is possibly a con rather than a pro. Thank you.
I appreciate your input. I will think about it. Thank you.
Nobody
Next
wants
question, please.
Yeah, nobody wants another agent. Question, when you were working through this, did you look any of the orchestration that comes out after you've got your inventory data, basically being able to do something with that, export of CBOM, import of CBOM, again, pushing that into the SOC or running it out through other processes?
Not sure in this project because I was not directly involved with it. In another project, we were trying to generate CBOMs from online, available tools, but never really tried to make an assessment on what to do once you get a CBOM. We were able to generate, say, a dashboard and say, okay, this is what is contained in a CBOM, and there's like thousands of lines of entries in the CBOM, and then we're like, oh, this is using this still, and then that was mostly it. But that's probably something for the next steps in the project.
Okay, would love to be part of that. Thank you.
Just want to ask if there are any questions online from our online audience.
While you're waiting, I don't have a question, but I did want to compliment you on your work. I ran across it last summer. I think you're way ahead of everybody, so congratulations and thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We do have an online question. It's fairly lengthy, but it's a surprise cryptoanalytic capability is the most enticing attack route for the enemies of the United States. Shouldn't we be prepared for an attacker much smarter than we expect them to be? Why don't we pay attention to pattern devoid cryptography, which is based on lavish use of randomness, building persistent evocation that offers a mathematical proof of security? Yes, it's more cumbersome, but it may be the only thing that works. I'm not quite sure what the question is in that.
I'm not sure either.
Maybe that's one that we best review carefully in writing and think about it in a little more depth.
Okay, there's a second question, a different person that's shorter. It says, is SHA-256 not in CNSA 2.0, and if not, why?
I'm not sure I'm the best guy to answer this question. We have Andrew and Bill here. Maybe they can answer that better. I'm just a guy from Europe. I have nothing to do with CNSA.
Please, last question.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for your work. I'm curious about something you mentioned in relation to it's inventory. It's an inventory question. What kind of government do we need to solve this problem or get things going? Is it the American style directive, or is the European style somewhere in the middle, consensus?
Oh, that's a good one. Somewhere in the middle, I would say. It's in Europe we have there's a conglomerate of countries that are trying to do that, and there's a few countries that are trying to take the lead and push this agenda, and I think they are doing a good job at it, just like cooperating and trying to bring everybody together instead of trying to push it from the top, which is a very effective way of doing it, but doesn't really work in the European style. So I would say a little bit more assertiveness could help in Europe, but I think that things are moving and countries are taking the lead and trying to lead by example as well. There's a vision, and it's also a matter of trying to bring everybody together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alessandro. That was great.
My
and I would
pleasure.
just encourage all of you. There are links in his presentations to follow up on the material, and I would just encourage you all to do that. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
at ssl.com. Trust is what we do. We provide PKI solutions, identity trust services, and cloud code signing to keep your data and software secure. Secure documents at scale with high-volume document e-sealing. Join us at the PQC Conference 2025 to explore secure solutions. SSL.com. Securing trust, enabling innovation. Visit SSL.com.